Good morning, good noon, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever the time of the day that you are watching this lecture video. I hope you are doing fine and well today. So today we will be discussing changes to habitats and the density of disease related. We will be discussing how do the different changes or alterations of habitat can affect health related issues that we face in our society. Let me introduce first to you our learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to first determine what is the global environmental change and infectious disease. Then after that, you'll be explaining the different changes in the density or presence of the disease-related organisms. So let's start. Before we start our formal discussion, I have here two pictures. So we have here a before picture of an habitat and after picture of an habitat. So what have you noticed on between these two pictures? So some of you may say that there is a habitat alteration from which a healthy environment or a healthy environment turned into unhealthy one. Perhaps some of you would say that there would be a lesser organisms na dito na na-part kasi it's unhealthy na. So perhaps some of the organisms have already migrated to a healthier environment. So what I want you to do now is I want you to pause this video and I want you to reflect and try to list down all the possible negative effects that you may think of this alteration of habitat in relation to our human health or to human health. Okay, you may now pause the video. And there you go. All right, so let's now go ahead and proceed. So we will be checking your answers later. Now, for our second activity, I have here four columns. So we have here for the first column, it deals with the changes in habitat and climate. And then in the second one, we have environmental condition. Next is the environmental hazard. And then we have health effects. So what I want you to do now, guys, is I want you to predict the possible result of the different changes in habitat. So I want you to predict the environmental condition. I want you to predict the environmental hazards and the health effects that it may result from the changes in habitat and climate. And I want you to get your answers here in our choices, okay? So you may again pause this video and write down your answers in any sheet of paper, and then we will be checking your answers after. Okay, there you go. So let's now try to check your paper or your answers. So first, we have here the changes in habitat. So we have three givens for this. We have heavy precipitation, increase in temperature, and then deforestation. So what are its possible environmental condition na kanyang mai-impose sa ating environment? So for heavy precipitation, what is your answer? All right, so it's very obvious, no flooding. So if there would be heavy precipitation, it is most likely that the environment or the area would flood. And then because of flooding, there would be stagnant water at home, which create now a habitat for mosquito. And because of that, there would be now increased incidence of mosquito transmitted diseases. So next we have here increase in temperature from which it can lead to drought. Okay. And then what is now the environmental hazard that it may cause? That is the increase of heat and temperature, of course. And then after that, the environmental or the health effect, it would be heat stroke. Next is we have deforestation, and then it would lead to soil erosion and degradation. And then, or you can also say that it would lead to fragmented habitat and then soil erosion. It depends upon the process, right? So we have different processes on that. We can interchange these answers. So it may that the soil erosion can fragment habitat and may also the fragmented habitat can result to soil erosion and degradation. Then the result of this is there would be an increase of vector-borne diseases. So based on our activity, guys, what have you noticed? What do you think now is the relationship of environment and human health? Okay, very nice. As what you have noticed, guys, the different changes in our environment can affect the health of the organisms living on the area. So it may not be directly influenced. However, there are processes that may lead to a negative health results or negative health effects. So, as we all know that the four subsystems of the earth are interacting with each other. So, if we pollute one of the subsystem, it would also influence other subsystem. For example, if we pollute our water resources or our hydrosphere, di ba meron tayong apat na subsystems of the earth. We have hydrosphere, which deals with the water bodies of the earth. And then we have the geosphere, which deals with um, the land area of the earth, including the soil, the trees. And then for the third one, we have the atmosphere. It is now the um, envelope part or the covering part of the earth. And then lastly, we have the biosphere, which is the life subsystem of the earth. Now, again, these four subsystems of the earth are interacting with each other. So if we pollute our hydrosphere, other subsystems would be affected because again, they are interacting. If we pollute our atmosphere, the biosphere will also be affected. Now, again, healthy planet is or healthy planet, healthy people. That means if we have a healthy planet, people living on that planet would be healthy as well. So human health and the health of the environment are intimately connected. If you expose a particular organism to an unhealthy environment, it is most likely that organisms would acquire diseases or would become unhealthy as well. So at the same time, investments in human health can help improve the health of the environment. The environment is a key factor in determining the health of the people. That is why our local government is really trying its best to combat pollution and to make our environment conducive for living. Now, before we delve further, let's now discuss or let's now define some terms that we will be using in today's discussion. First, we have zoonosis. Zoonosis, guys, is an infectious disease that has jumped from a non-human animals to human. That's according to World Health Organization. So basically, or in simply speaking, zoonosis is just a simple transfer of disease from animals to human, right? So wildlife habitats are vital to human survival and agricultural production. But these natural places and the animals that inhabit them face increasing pressure from human activity, leading to the emergence of new animal to human transmitted diseases like the COVID-19. So those different changes of habitat can impose change in a particular climatic condition. Now, if we change the climatic condition, it would also affect the health of our organisms. So how do our viruses work pala, guys? Paano, aside from the vector-borne diseases, yung mga diseases na edad ng animals, how do these viruses work pala? So we all know that especially mga marine bio and FT students, they are really um acquainted with the sciences, no, the mga proteins, the mga macromolecules natin. So we all know that viruses are a series of protein, right? Mga foldings sila ng protein. Now, they are just freely floating in our environment. That is why viruses are considered as non-living organisms because they're just um, proteins that are free floating in the environment. They will just become living if they attach to a particular host. So what it will do, it will control the cell and then mag-ano na siya, magkalat na yun siya. Now, Again, if we change the different climatic conditions based due to habitat alteration, ang katong mga organisms na nagpuyo atong area are prone to viruses and prone to different diseases. Like for example, we have the bats, right? So katong mga bats nga naka-acquire og COVID-19, katuto sila ang mga bats nga nag-decrease ang ilang immune system from which na-affect sila or na dili na kaya sa ilahang um, from which na-carry nila ang diseases, 'di ba? Pero actually ang bats mong good guys kay naagid sila mechanism to battle the infections mong good sa ilang body. So they are really the common vector or carrier ato nga mga viruses. But on the other hand, inga na ang mga virus nag-work. So again, magkasakit ta, it's just because of the different climatic conditions nga nagahitabo sa ato ang surroundings. Now, as humans continue to convert wildlife habitats and encroach on them for hunting and gathering purposes, they are setting themselves up for further spread of disease. So yun, for example, we break down or we fragment forest. Now, those organisms living in that forest would tend to migrate to another place, right? O muna nga ang mga bats, mupuyo na sa cities, ang katong mga orangutans, sa mga different organisms, sa mga wild boar, di ba, mapuyo na sa cities because wala naman sila yung mapuyan. So they would live together with human. Now, since together sila with human, there would be human to animal interaction. Now, because of that interaction, guys, mas prone na dayon ang pag-spread of diseases. Furthermore, vector-borne diseases are those that are transmitted to humans by mosquitoes, ticks, fleas, and animals. Vector transmit pathogens or causative agents such as viruses, bacteria, and protozoa. So yon, let's try to define these terms, okay? So again, zoonosis, it is the process, okay? It is the process from which disease transmission is coming from the animals and it would be transmitted to humans. Now, vector-borne diseases, these are the disease, okay? Nga matransmit by zoonosis. Vectors naman, those are the animals. Vectors are the animals that we call or those are the animals that carry the different pathogens like viruses, bacteria, and protozoa. Katong mga host sila for disease. And then sila itong mag-transmit of disease to human. Now, I have here a diagram kung paano siya nagahitabo, kung paano good affect ang ato ang environment sa health as a human. So the first thing yun is due to human activity, there would be a changes in habitat and climate. Okay? So there will be changes in habitat and climate. And because of that changes, it would alter the biological composition, structure, complexity of much of the global land surface. So because of that alteration, what will happen? It would change now the abiotic parameters that are often fundamental in defining the range and breeding habitat of numerous vectors, hosts, and pathogens. So yun, katong mga non-living parameters in an ecosystem would be affected, from which that directly affects the organisms living in the area. It may affect their breeding habitat, it may affect their behavior, and etc. So yun. Now, after Anna, what will happen now? Okay, we have here temporary. Oh, so ito yung mga, by the way, these are the different abiotic parameters na mag-change because of habitat alteration. So we have here the temperature and soil moisture, maapektuhan siya. So pwede nga from dry to wet, pwede po siya from moistured na soil to dry. Depende sa changes. Precipitation patterns. Ito, kung before, kani siya kay dili gini magbaha diri dili kini anuhan ulananan kaayo karon kay mag-change na. Piminti na ulan nun or it's either wala na po'y precipitation, di ba? Exposure to sunlight, of course. Geochemical cycles. Ito, mo gitong ingon ako, di ba, ang subsystems of the earth are interconnected to each other. They are affecting each other, di ba? they are interacting with each other. So katong mga like biogeochemical cycles nato like nitrogen cycle, katong mga water cycle nato that would be affected. Nutrient concentration, surface water chemistry. So those are the different abiotic components or non-living components that would be affected sa pag-change nato sa habitat. Now, what is its result? It would result to the changes in the density or presence of vectors, hosts, and pathogens. Okay, so these are the common vectors and vector-borne diseases that we commonly encounter. So we have here the different diseases. It's very timely. We have the COVID-19, which is the novel coronavirus. It's the causative agent. And ano yung mga vectors niya? These are bats. And then the method of infection is food through human consumption. Malaria, ang kanyang causative agents are protozoan. Those are the different organisms nga nag-live sa vectors, okay? These are the causative agents. So we have Plasmodium species, and its vectors are Anopheles mosquitoes. And then the methods of infection is through biting. And then we have here dengue fever. We have virus naman ang kanyang causative agent, which is the dengue virus. And then yung kanyang vectors are the Aedes mosquitoes. And then through bite pa rin ang kanyang infection. Encephalitis, these are um, caused by the herpes simplex virus, which are also carried by the Culex mosquitoes. And then the mode of transmission is biting. We also have African sleeping sickness, which is caused by protozoan. We have here Trypanosoma brucei, and the vectors are chacha fly. And then through biting pa rin. Dysentery, okay, amoebic dysentery, it's very common. It is caused by a protozoan which we call Entamoeba histolytica, and it's being carried by housefly. And then it can transmit diseases through food contamination. Cholera as well, it is brought to us by bacteria. We have the Vibrio cholerae. And then, ang kanyang vectors are housefly pa rin. And then it is through food contamination. So those are the common vectors and vector-borne diseases. Now, in studying zoonosis, guys, so we usually use malaria to study the transmission of diseases because um, of its high death toll and as well its resistance to effort at eradication and long-term prophylaxis. So prophylaxis, guys, it is the process from which an organism will become immune to any chemical exposure. So yon, if you tend to eradicate malaria, they will just adapt to the chemicals that we apply sa ilaha, and then pag human maging resistant sila ato ng mga chemicals. So that's why malaria atong usually ginagamit, no, kay aside sa taas ihang death toll, it's kind of interesting po because kumbaga dugay siya, dugay ang ano ko min ba that kanang kumbaga dugay siya na eradicate kaya tungod sa iyang capability to resist prophylaxis. Malaria is transmitted by a wide variety of location-specific mosquito species within genus Anopheles, and many of those pervasive types of land use change, such as deforestation, dams, and agricultural development, affect the density of the different Anopheles vectors, leading to the increase of the disease transmission. Now, we have here some examples of land use. So, paano yung natin ginagamit yung mga land resources natin and the change in habitat and increase of disease transmission. So first, we have deforestation. How deforestation can increase vector-borne diseases. So, an example, nahitabo siya, that was on the Peruvian Amazon. So, ang biting rates dito sa Anopheles dirlinga are almost 300 times higher than in intact forests, controlling for differences in human density across varied landscape. So, yun. So, what happened? Kay, again, pag deforestate mo, once you remove the trees and their habitat, what will happen? They will um, they will migrate to a place, and then mo-migrate sila dapit sa katong naay duol na nga interaction with human. Okay? So doon na, and the more nga nag-interact ang kanilang mga vectors sa human, mas paspas yun ang transmission of these diseases. Similar associations have been observed in sub-Saharan Africa. In Asia, deforestation favors some vectors over others, but frequently leads to increased transmission. Okay. So yun, again, once we break the forest or we fragment forest, those organisms living there will migrate, and then magpuyo sila sa asa po nagpuyo ang mga tao or near human. And then due to the vector and human interaction, there would be an increase of um, vector-borne diseases. Okay, isa pud sa maka-affect guys are kanang building dams. Microdams in northern Ethiopia increase the concentration of the local Anopheles vector and are associated with a sevenfold increase in malaria in nearby villages, especially kina mga stagnant water na mga na-build o kana mga microdams nato. So because of that, mag-increase ang katong mga Anopheles vectors. Irrigation projects, yun. In India, irrigation projects in 1990s improved breeding sites for Anopheles Colcifacies and lead to endemic irrigation malaria among roughly 200 million people. So, di ba, grabe kataas ang iyang cases of malaria. It's actually due to the unhealthy or impractical irrigation project in India. Next is another factor, guys, is the agricultural development. So in the case of Thailand, both cassava and sugarcane cultivation reduce the density of Anopheles dirus, which is actually okay, di ba? Nag-lessen ang kanang mga mosquitoes with Anopheles dirus na genus and species. Pero ang problem po niya, ang kanipong sugarcane and cassava, nahimo siyang breeding grounds for Anopheles minimus, which is another species of mosquito nga vector gihapon, and then nag-widespread siya dito. And again, nag-increase dayon ang cases sa malaria. Wetland drainage. So in Uganda, the drainage and cultivation of papyrus swamps cause higher ambient temperature and more Anopheles gambiae individuals per household than found in villages surrounding undisturbed swamps. So aside from the swamps, nag-increase pa ang temperature, which is kumbaga very good environment or good condition for these Anopheles gambiae to increase population. So yun. Drivers of global environmental change, example, are land use change or climate change. Land use change or climate change can directly pose health risk or impair ecosystem services that subsequently influence health. For hazards that affect human health, however, exposures will be modified by multiple layers of social or infrastructure barriers that can buffer or eliminate risk. Together, all components must be considered to achieve realistic assessments of population vulnerability. So, having the increase of these problems, guys, so we also have different insulating layers that lessen the hazard that vector-borne diseases may cause. So for example, we have here different causes, okay? So example, we have changes in land use and cover. So ito yung mga different changes and alterations we do to our environment that would lead to negative health outcomes. So ito, the changes in land use, deforestation, dams, irrigation, agricultural extension, intensification, livestock management, urbanization, and road construction. Of course, it would lead to a negative health outcome. Another one is the deterioration of ecosystem services. So these are the most common causes no kaning tulo. And then we have climate change, warming temperatures, more extreme storms, hydrologic extremes, and sea level rise. So again, these three guys, muna sila ang mga causes that would affect or that would induce negative health outcomes. And now, we also have created insulating layers para makombat ni mga negative health outcomes. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 layers nga maka-help to mitigate and to buffer the effect of these negative health outcomes. Now, first layer is we have the philanthropic safety philanthropic safety net that protects population. Yeah, philanthropic safety net that protects population. So we have the different philanthropic organizations, guys, that are helping really the society to combat negative health outcomes. For example, in the case of COVID-19, maraming mga philanthropists ang nag-offer, nag-donate, may mga organizations nga naghatag og mga alcohol, naghatag og mga safety kit in order to combat the negative health outcomes to mga face masks, to mga face shield. So these philanthropic safety net, guys, these are the non-government organization and the government organizations nga nagabuhat og mga programs to battle negative health hazards. Okay? So kato mga donations ninyo, kato appeal to mga bayanihan nato that would belong to the philanthropic safety net um, barrier that we have. Next is population protected by learned or culturally determined behaviors. So ito. So these are now, this second layer are pertains to the different cultures that we learn in order to combat negative health outcomes. One nga pinaka common is washing of hands, right? So before, wala ta naga-wash of hands. And then, na yung mga transmission of diseases. And even in medical fields before, guys, in ano wala pa na discover ang mga pathogens. Washing of hands in hospitals are not practiced actually. However, due to further studies and then mga pathology ka ng mga pathogens at pag-learn og mga pathogens, naka-learn tag mga bago na mga culture and bago na mga learned behaviors. So mo nang atong DOH kinaga pa-seminar gid sa mga schools ginatudluan ang bata maghugas og kamot, ginatudluan ta kung saan mag-clean sa environment nga dili puy og mga lamok, mag-brush og teeth, di ba? So those are the learned behaviors. Mag-disinfect og water para sa consumption. So those are the learned behaviors that we have para i-combat ni mga negative health outcomes. Next is we have different technology. So the third layer are the different technology and infrastructure that can battle negative health outcomes. So yun yung mga technologies natin, lahat ng mga technologies natin that would fight negative health outcomes, din na siya mabilang sa tuang third layer. Next of that is the population can replace locally damaged ecosystem services with regional global ecosystem services. Ito na yung mga um, what do you call by that? These are now the adaptive measures that we have in order to save our environment. Ito yung mga remedies na ginagawa ng ating associations and organizations, for example, tree planting, para um, ma-replace or ma-replenish yung mga damage sa ating ecosystem. Next to that is population not approaching vulnerability threshold per resource constraint. It is the outermost kanang layer from which very important we need to limit our population nga dili ta mula pa sa threshold of the environment nga mag-provide og resources. So that is now the vulnerability threshold for resource constraint. So that's the last layer. So again, philanthropic safety net, those are the different organizations that donates or conduct activities that would help us buffer negative health outcomes. Population protected by learned or cultural behaviors, those are the different behaviors that we learn in combating diseases like washing of hands, disinfecting water. So yun. Next is the different technologies that we have. Yung mga different technologies in fighting pathogens, yung mga mag-fight ng mga viruses and different vector causative agents. Okay? Next is we have the population or the organizations replacing the damaged ecosystem or trying to replenish the damaged ecosystem. And lastly, the vulnerability threshold. So what we do is that we limit our population so that we would not exceed to the threshold that the environment can provide, no? So resources kaya i-provide sa ato environment. Ayun. So we already have discussed the different um negative effects of habitat alteration to human health. And we also have discussed the different precaution or adaptive measures that we can do in order to combat those negative health outcomes. So yun. So if you still have any questions, clarifications, you can just message me and we will be answering all of your concerns about this topic as long as we have time. Thank you very much again for your participation. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye for now, everyone.